It began with a strange, hollow ache tugging at me during one of those restless nights where the silence of the room felt heavier than sleep itself. I hadn't touched horror in years, not the real kind at least. Not the anonymous late-night whispers of the internet that once kept me awake long past midnight. Back in my late teens, I lived for those stories. No sleep, creepypasta, forum threads where strangers bled out their nightmares in raw, unpolished words. They weren't slick or polished like novels. They were jagged, urgent, almost confessional, as if the authors were whispering secrets directly into your ear. They felt human, dangerously so. I used to devour them in bed with earbuds buried in my ears, lights off, my breath fogging slightly in the cold of my room. I wasn't seeking terror. I was seeking that uneasy comfort of dread, the sensation that something unseen had just stepped into the room with me. It became a ritual, the way some people pray before sleep. A few weeks ago, I tried chasing that feeling again. Restless, bored, and oddly sentimental, I decided to revisit those old digital ghosts. The classics still lingered, brittle with age, but haunting in their familiarity. Ben Drowned, The Russian Sleep Experiment, Pen Pal. I even unearthed screenshots from long-dead forums preserved by obsessive hoarders in forgotten corners of Blogspot. Anonymous authors, nameless warnings, crude formatting, all of it felt like time traveling into an era where horror was less performance and more confession. But comfort rots quickly. The moment I turned to the present to argue no sleep and its endless scroll of trending tales, the illusion shattered. What once dripped with sincerity now felt hollow. The stories were polished to the point of sterility. Every line seemed engineered for engagement. Word counts bent neatly to algorithmic rules. Some were formulaic, lifeless copies of better stories. Others veered into bizarre, incoherent fragments that read more like machine chatter than human fear. AI stories, I muttered aloud, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Each post reeked of predictability, perfectly structured, soulless. I searched for the old masters, those digital shadows who once haunted my youth, only to find their works deleted or suffocated under arbitrary moderation rules. The wild, chaotic spirit of horror where readers once argued fiercely about what was real had been stripped clean. I refused to let go. I wanted that pulse of authenticity again, the sense that a story wasn't entertainment but evidence. So I searched in the forgotten places, dusty forums, obscure link trees, web pages abandoned for a decade, their backgrounds still neon black with blood-red fonts. I waded through endless garbage-haunted dolls, glitching mirrors, forest vanishings recycled 100 times over. Yet every so often one story would strike me, not polished, not even particularly well written, but charged with sincerity. It was that rare quality, like someone had written not to entertain but to confess. That's what kept me going. And then I found it. It was buried deep in a forum that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The kind of place where usernames were long forgotten, banners broken, and the formatting reeked of an internet era when nobody cared about presentation. A wasteland of rotting digital text. The thread's title snagged my attention instantly. Don't read this if you like sleeping. It sat there wedged between two half-hearted tales, one about haunted TV static, another about some abandoned zoo. Both were predictable, barely worth a glance, but this thread had no comments. No upvotes, no tags, just the title, the username listed as deleted, and a timestamp over a year old. It was dead in every sense. For a moment I hovered over it, my cursor trembling in indecision. Logic whispered that it was just another joke post, a throwaway from some bored kid. But something else, a deeper, older instinct, told me to click. The same instinct that once kept me awake with earbuds bleeding ghost stories into my head. Against reason, against good sense, I obeyed. The page opened into a wall of plain, unbroken text. No formatting, no attempt at style. Just words stacked like bricks, cold and uninviting. It wasn't written like a story, not even like a warning. It was written like a report, detached, sterile. It spoke of her, a girl in a yellow raincoat. She would appear after you learned about her. First, just in the corners of your room, silent, unmoving, face hidden deep beneath the hood. Her eyes were never visible, yet you felt them. Watching, always watching. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. She only dripped water pooling at her feet, as though she'd just stepped from a storm no one else could see. The text gave no tension, no dramatic build, no catharsis. It simply explained, she arrives once you know of her. Each night she comes closer. The fear sustains her. When she has had her fill of that fear, she takes you. No description of what she does. No survivor accounts, just silence after the final approach. One line made me scoff despite myself. The more you fear her, the wetter she gets. The absurdity of it broke through my unease for just a heartbeat, reminding me of those old chain emails that used to circulate forward this to 10 friends or die in 7 days. It reeked of cheap fabrication, but the final sentence hit harder. It was bolded, standing out against the monotone slab of text. If you reach 3:41 a.m. and she's at the foot of your bed, It's already too late, I snorted at the dramatics, but I couldn't deny the faint chill prickling my arms. Shaking it off, I closed the thread. Enough for the night, I told myself. It was late anyway. That night at 2 a.m., I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth when a soft knock rattled against the door. Just once, sharp. The toothbrush vibrated in my mouth as I froze, every muscle locking. Slowly, I turned off the faucet. I listened. Silence. Only the faint creak of the ceiling vent above. I forced the door open. The hallway yawned back at me empty. But when I turned to head back inside, I noticed something strange. The carpet by the bathroom threshold was wet. Not soaked, but unmistakably damp. I crouched down, touched it. Moisture clung to my fingertips. My chest tightened. Did I spill something? Did I track in water earlier? I couldn't remember. Forcing myself to ignore the unease curling in my gut, I shut off the light and crawled into bed. Hours later, I jolted awake, heart racing, pulse hammering in my ears. No sound had stirred me. No nightmare lingered, yet my chest thudded as though I had sprinted for miles. I turned my head toward the alarm clock, 41 a.m. A cold shiver stabbed straight through me. Coincidence, I whispered to myself. That's all it is, coincidence. Out of a million people, someone had to wake up at that time. Tonight, it just happened to be me. But when I sat up and let my eyes adjust to the darkness, the room felt wrong. Too still, too silent. The kind of silence that didn't comfort, it suffocated. I scanned the corners. The blinds shut tight, the closet closed. The cracked open door revealed only shadow beyond. Nothing moved. Nothing was there, and yet when I looked at the carpet by the door, it was wet again, not a trick of memory, not an accident. Dampness glistened in the faint glow of the clock like the aftertaste of rain. I couldn't explain it away this time. I told myself it was nothing. That wetness on the carpet? A plumbing quirk. Condensation, maybe even a spill I was too tired to remember. I wanted so badly to believe it, to return to sleep without that gnawing dread in my chest. But sleep never came easily after that. I tossed, turned, finally dragged my laptop back into bed. The forum thread was still open in another tab, its ugly slab of text waiting like a patient predator. I scrolled back through it, rereading the same cold words. She arrives once you know her. Each night she comes closer. There were no comments, no updates, no hidden replies. The author's account was gone, listed only as deleted. No way to contact them, no way to confirm if it was just an elaborate prank. I even checked the moderators. Just one offline for over a year. The thread was a digital corpse, still I couldn't let it go. Out of sheer desperation, I created an account and left a reply. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Is this a joke? Has anyone else read this?" I was refreshed once, twice, a third time, nothing. Of course there wouldn't be. Who in their right mind was lurking this dead corner of the internet, waiting to pounce on an ancient thread? At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. I don't know how long I slept before it happened. A sudden snap like my body had been yanked out of a dream. My eyes flew open and they didn't go to the window or the door. They went straight to the corner, and that's when I saw her, small. Still, the silhouette of a child maybe, but heavy with something that wasn't human. A yellow raincoat clung to her in sodden folds. Water streaked down the sleeves and pooled onto the floorboards. Her hood was drawn low, her face swallowed in shadow. All I could see was the tilt of her head unnaturally, too sharp as if bones had been bent wrong. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She simply was. My lungs locked. My mind screamed for a reason, but instinct took over. I lurched upright, shrieking, slamming the light switch beside my bed. The corner was empty. Only a damp, darkened impression remained on the carpet, the fibers heavy with water that hadn't been there before. For minutes, I just sat there clutching my chest, my pulse roaring. My eyes watered not from tears, but from how long I refused to blink, terrified she'd reappear if I looked away. The next night bled into each other. Sleep fractured into fragments, each interruption more violent than the last, and always she was there. The first night after the scream, she stood by the door. Same raincoat, same silence, same dripping feet. The next night, she moved closer to the far corner of my room. By the third, she waited by the closet. The sight of her grew sharper each time. The raincoat wasn't bright anymore. It was dull, warped. Its plastic bubbled in strange patches, dirt streaked across its folds. Her arms hung stiffly, fingers jutting out pale and rigid beneath the cuffs. Water seeped out beneath her bare feet, spreading across the hardwood like a dark halo. She never moved while I looked at her. She never flinched, never reacted. But when I blinked, when sleep threatened, when my eyes finally betrayed me, she edged closer. And the worst part? She didn't exist on camera. I tried everything. Phone recordings, laptop webcam, even a dusty camcorder from storage. Each time the footage was clean. An empty room, no raincoat, no water, no child. But reflections told the truth. The first time I caught her in the bathroom mirror. I turned my head and nothing was there. But in the glass, her outline loomed just behind me, her soaked hood dripping into the hallway light. I backed out without ever turning my head. After that, I covered every mirror in the apartment. The fear was tightening its grip night by night. What I once thought was coincidence began to feel like inevitability, and deep down I knew I wasn't chasing stories anymore. I was inside one. It became impossible to live like a normal person. Sleep wasn't rest anymore. It was a battlefield. Every time my eyelids fluttered, every time my body begged for rest, she was waiting. Not just in the room, but inside the edges of my mind, pressing in with the weight of inevitability. I started avoiding night altogether. Curtains boarded shut, blinds nailed down. I covered every reflective surface, mirrors, screens, even the black gloss of picture frames, anything that might betray her presence when I wasn't looking. My apartment transformed into a bunker, a tomb lit constantly by lamps that hummed and hissed with tired filaments. I told myself the light would save me, that she couldn't thrive in brightness. But light bulbs die. One by one they burned out, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes all at once. Each pop of glass sent me lunging for replacements, frantic, trembling, as though every second in shadow was an invitation. Friends noticed my absence. Calls went unanswered. Messages piled up. One night a friend knocked on my door for nearly 20 minutes, their voice muffled by concern. "Hey, are you okay in there? We're worried." "Just open the door." I didn't move. I sat frozen on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the locked knob as if it were another mouth she could slip through. Eventually, the knocking stopped. I heard them mutter something about a wellness check. Nobody ever came. Relief should have come with that silence. Instead, I was left with the terrible thought, what if they learned about her because of me? What if I cursed them too? Still, she came. At first, she hovered across the room, keeping her unreal like a nightmare at the edge of consciousness. But she was patient. Patient in a way only something timeless could be. Each night shaved the distance smaller. First by the closet, then by the dresser, then beside the bed. The last time I looked, the hem of her raincoat was brushing the edge of my mattress. Water pooled across the floorboards, swelling beneath her bare feet, and the sound it wasn't silent anymore. It was the slow, deliberate drip of stagnant water hitting wood. My apartment began to change. The air felt heavy, damp, carrying the sour stench of mildew. The floorboards warped and swelled as though even the building itself was rejecting her presence. I pressed towels beneath the doors, taped plastic across cracks in the walls, but nothing kept her out. Reality itself bent around her. I stopped thinking in terms of days and nights. I lost track of time. Hours bled into each other as I sat hunched before glowing screens, searching for any scrap of evidence that someone else had endured this. I dug deeper than I ever thought possible, beyond forums, beyond blogs, into the dustiest corners of the internet. Archived Usenet threads, live journal posts, MySpace bulletins, even BBS dumps long forgotten. And I found her there too. Always the same pattern. A story, a sighting, then silence. Accounts deleted. Blogs scrubbed. Entire sites abandoned after a single mention of the girl in the raincoat. It was as if she wasn't just haunting me. She was haunting the narrative itself. And the one post stood out. An old entry dated 2006, a username Lockjaw Mile. The title, Narrative Leech. The post was short, blunt, brutal. She is a parasite that spreads through stories. Once you learn her, she learns you back. Your thoughts give her form. Your fear gives her strength. I read those lines again and again, each time sinking deeper into despair. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a delusion. It was designed. The more I thought of her, the stronger she became. And I couldn't stop thinking of her. My body revolted against rest. Each time I drifted, I jolted awake, lungs aching as if I had been drowning. My reflection was no longer my own. I caught glimpses of her standing behind me, dripping silently, head tilted in that unnatural angle. Even when I tore down the mirrors, she seeped into the black screens of my electronics, the faint shine of window glass, even the shadows themselves. I had no one left to call, no one I trusted to share this with, because if I told them, if I described her too vividly, they might picture her. And picturing her was enough. I was already doomed. I couldn't let her spread. And yet the deeper truth festered. She was already spreading. It happened during one of those nights where time slipped through my fingers like water. I was hunched over the dim glow of my monitor, my body raw from sleeplessness, eyes bloodshot and burning, when something changed on the screen. At the top of that decaying forum, the same one where I first found her story, a notification blinked. A new private message. For a long time, I just stared at it, the words "one new message" glowing faintly in the corner of the page. My chest tightened. Nobody used this place anymore. Threads lay rotting for years without replies. For me to receive a private message here, it felt impossible. Still, with trembling hands, I clicked. The username was nothing but a string of numbers. No profile. No history. No trace of a real person. The message was short, almost clinical in tone. I was the one who originally posted the story. She came to me after I read about her, same as you. But I survived. The words hit like a defibrillator to my chest. Survived. Someone had survived. I read on, desperate for hope. Based on when you left your comment, you don't have long left. I wrote the story, but the moderator read it too. He deleted my account thinking I was the one haunting him. He was wrong. It isn't me. It's the story. She is a fictional incarnate. The only way to escape is to pass her on. Write her story. Let someone else read. That's how you sever her from yourself. I sat frozen, the words searing into me. Pass her on. The meaning was obvious. Terrible. If I wrote this, if I told her story clearly enough, vividly enough, someone else would stumble upon it. They'd imagine the raincoat, the dripping, the faceless hood tilted in the dark, and that would be enough. She would turn her head. She would step toward them, and I would be free. The cursor blinked at me like an executioner's drumbeat. I wanted to reject it, to scream that I wouldn't damn another soul to this fate. But my body was already breaking. Weeks of terror had left me hollow, trembling, barely able to stand without swaying. I wasn't surviving anymore, I was decaying. Wasn't it mercy to pass her on quickly? To give someone else the same chance I'd been given? If I crafted the story right, maybe they'd outsmart her. Maybe they'd break the cycle. Maybe they'd be the last. But the guilt pressed down on me, heavier than her dripping presence at my side. This wasn't survival. It was a sacrifice. One sleepless mind traded for another. I typed furiously. Every detail. Every sighting. Every rule. My fingers ached, but I didn't stop. I had to get it right. Had to trap her essence in words the way she wanted. The way she spread. Hours passed. My apartment was still. The lights hummed softly overhead. My breath came in shallow bursts as I hovered over the final word of the post. My finger rested above the mouse, trembling, and then the temperature shifted. The air behind me grew damp and cold, prickling my skin. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. In the glossy reflection of my monitor, I saw her distorted but unmistakable. The yellow raincoat, the dripping sleeves. Standing inches from my chair, her head tilted, twitching slightly. Her hands hung stiff at her sides, water dripping onto the floor in steady beats that echoed in my ears. The stench of stagnant water filled my lungs. The clock on my desk glared at me in red digits. 41:01 a.m. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. The cursor pulsed on the word post, and with the last ounce of will I had left, I clicked. The instant my finger pressed the mouse, the screen flickered. A shiver rippled through the apartment as though the building itself exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. Not safe, not healed, but lighter, as if something pressing against my chest had drawn back. Behind me, the sound of dripping slowed, then stopped. I turned. The corner was empty. The air was dry. The boards beneath my feet were warped but no longer slick with water. She was gone. I collapsed against the desk, my face buried in my hands, a sob breaking loose from somewhere deep and raw. Relief and guilt tangled in my chest like barbed wire. I had survived. I had done the unthinkable to survive. But survival had a cost. The post is live now. Somewhere, someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe weeks from now, someone would stumble across those words. Someone chasing nostalgia or curiosity or boredom. They would see the yellow raincoat in their mind's eye, and the moment they did, she would find them. I tried to rationalize. I gave them a warning. I told them the rules. I armed them with more than I ever had. But the truth was sour and undeniable. I hadn't broken the curse. I had simply handed it off like a poisoned gift. One mind spared, another condemned. Days passed, though I measured them poorly. Sleep came in fits, jagged and restless, but at least when I opened my eyes, the room was empty. No dripping. No shadowed hood in the corner. For the first time, silence was just silence, and yet I couldn't stop thinking of her. The way her raincoat clung like a second skin. The tilt of her faceless head. The cold presence that felt less like a ghost and more like a narrative weight pressing down on me. Even in her absence, she lingered. Not in my room, but in my thoughts. And that's when I realized the cruelty of it. She wasn't just a parasite feeding on fear. She was a story. A living story. Her existence wasn't tied to the body she haunted, it was tied to memory. Once you knew of her, she lived inside you. And once you wrote her, you became her voice. Some nights, when insomnia claws me awake, I think about the one who will read that post next, the unlucky soul who will stumble across it the way I did. I imagine them reading late at night, brushing off the words as just another internet relic. I imagine their laughter when they read that ridiculous line. The wetter she gets, the more you fear her. And then I imagine their silence. The first night they notice the carpet damp by their door. I wonder who they are. I wonder if they're stronger than me. Or if they too will eventually sit hunched at a desk, lights buzzing overhead, finger hovering over the same cursed word, post. Because that's how she wins. Not by drowning you. Not by tearing you apart, but by whispering herself into permanence through us. Every survivor becomes her scribe. Every escape fuels her spread. And somewhere, right now, someone is reading these words. I can almost hear it already. The soft, deliberate drip of water, the slow tilt of a hooded head, the faint scent of rain where there should be none. And when their clock blinks 3:41 a.m., it will already be too late.